2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I am headed on a plane to one of my favorite cities in America, and I'll say that about most places. Kansas City, Missouri. I might even touch the Kansas side before it's all over with if I land at the airport. I see barbecue in my future and some Country Club Plaza. I might even get to the World War I Museum because everybody keeps telling me to go there. But I will be in my seat for showtime at lunchtime, noon Central, 1 p.m. here in Baltimore. Kickoff, it's the game of the week. It's the rematch. It's Lamar. It's Mahomes. It's all that. Matt Derrick is the Chiefs beat writer and publisher for ChiefsDigest.com. You can find him out on the Twitter thing. He also has written a book called Showtime on Patrick Mahomes. And, man, it's early, but it's late if you're a Chiefs fan, right? You've been waiting 50 years for a championship, and Mahomes is the great hope, and we're all flying into this, and it's going to be fun this week, right, I think?
Yeah, it's going to be the Chiefs' home opener, so they're going to be pretty fired up for it. And with the start that the offense has gotten off to, good grief. I mean, anybody who was projecting a regression for Patrick Mahomes is looking pretty silly right now.
Well, the defense is the story there, right? Like, the offense feels like it's on autopilot, and it's going to go well until it doesn't go well. The Ravens' defense and the back end of the secondary a little beaten up. The pass rush, a little suspect. This was a track meet last year. The Ravens have turned over a lot of personnel. I know the Chiefs have as well. And both of these teams feeling really good about themselves right now. This is a fascinating matchup for where the teams were last year, but a whole different cast of characters around these two stars, right?
Yeah, this is going to be a really good test, I think, for both clubs, but especially for the Chiefs. Dual threat quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson have given them trouble in the past, and last year was another example of that. Jackson had a really good day. The Chiefs just got some last minute heroics that bailed him out of that ball game that I think the Ravens should have won. Yeah, but the defense is really the question. This team is comfortable with its offense. It knows that Mahomes, even if he struggles at times, even if the offense has moments like they did on Sunday against the Raiders, that they can turn it on. I mean, 28 points in one quarter, turning it on. The defense, though, you're right, is the question. And they got a lot of new faces. They're still working in. They're still really trying to figure out the identity of this defense, what it does well. So it's been kind of a different look in each of the first 2 weeks. And I don't know that we really have a definition of what this defense is yet.
Well, and I guess in the case of Mahomes, you see the weapons and you see what Kelce can do and you see what Robinson can do. I think it's a pretty busy week for Wink. And now that there's a couple of weeks of tape on what they're doing or what they're trying to do, I watched the end of the game in Oakland, and they pushed Oakland around pretty good. I did have to tip my cap to Derek Carr for hook sliding into the grass instead of into the dirt. Mahomes didn't figure that out until I think the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah, and that game played out, and I think in a really unusual way, because the Chiefs don't normally come out as cold as they did in that first quarter, and then they turn out 28 points in the second quarter. They still took some shots deep early in the second half, I think, trying to expand that lead. But by the end of the game, they were really just kind of running out the clock a little bit. And and they do have some questions coming into this week. Damian Williams left the game with a knee contusion, and LaShawn McCoy banged up his ankle. So I'm not sure that they're going to be 100% healthy. So it does beg the question, if this offense is going to have to look a little bit differently. They even changed the game plan against Oakland a little bit because with Patrick Mahomes with his ankle injury, they concentrated on keeping him, much more in the pocket than they normally do. Then you add in, they're missing Tyreek Hill. I'm still not sure that other than the first half against Jacksonville in week 1, that Andy Reid's had an opportunity to really, truly deploy the offense as he envisioned it at full go yet.
Well, with Tyreek Hill out, and we're 2 weeks into this, Matt, and I mean, I saw what happened to Trevor Siemian. We've seen what happened to Drew Brees. We know that Ben Roethlisberger is not going to be waiting for us at Heinz Field 3 weeks from now when we get up to Pittsburgh and play them. So you see how the injuries have affected our secondary, certainly your receiving core, as well as your quarterback, who did things differently last week and played the role of a pocket passer, but that would not make the Ravens think that he's going to do that again this week, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that he's going to have a little bit more mobility. He's continued to feel better and better after the ankle injury. And even though he didn't move around much against the Raiders, he flung the ball just fine. That was not a problem. And, and it's the speed of the Chiefs offense that's really the difference maker. You saw Demarcus Robinson, a guy that, has always been kind of a role player for the Chiefs in, his first 3+ seasons with the team, and goes out and has a huge day. Sammy Watkins has had a huge day this year already. They've got McCole Hardman, who has almost as much speed as Tyreek Hill does. They can just keep throwing speed at you, even with the injuries. And, and last year, another great example of this offense and its abilities, they were averaging about 7 yards a play before Kareem Hunt left the team. And that's historically great. I mean, that's one of the top 3 most prolific offenses in the league. They dropped down to about 6.5 yards a play after Hunt left, which is still really, really good. But I think it just illustrates that even if this
you get a lot of first downs averaging 7 yards a play, right? Literally,
yeah,
you can keep the ball a while when you're doing that.
They'll keep moving the ball.
Hey, the Ravens did that last year when they went to the RPO as well. I mean, you saw it. Being in 2nd and 2 was sort of like an operating offense. Where with Flacco, a lot of times it was 2nd and 10, and sometimes it was 2nd and 13. Sometimes it was 2nd and 17. The down and distance when you're always moving forward. Even if you take one play off, you get 6 or 7 on the next play. You can keep the ball alive, and that's really the way the new offense is. Whether it's Houston and utilizing these quarterbacks that have a different sort of dimension, a different sort of skill set than what other quarterbacks are utilizing in the sport right now.
And that fits Mahomes to a T. We're joking in the press box on Sunday against Oakland that the Chiefs had a 3rd and 20. And everybody in the press box was like, you know what? They can probably convert this. I mean, that's just the mentality. I mean, the philosophy with this team is that, and they believe it. They believe that they can convert any 3rd down on the field and then can score from any point on the field at any time.
Matt Derrick is running around with the greatest show on Arrowhead Turf. We're heading out to Kansas City. He is the Chiefs beat writer and publisher of ChiefsDigest.com. Also contributes at Sports Radio 810 and a Pro Football Writers Association member, which Chris Pica will appreciate your dues. Patrick Mahomes Showtime is the book. Tell me about your book a little bit. And the Mahomes story's fascinating because I covered his pop, throwing the baseball. And his dad was always kind of a classy guy and an interesting guy in the sport, and a guy you could sit and talk to at the locker, as I remember it back when I was a younger guy as well. Mahomes is running around with Lee Steinberg and clearly has an it factor and is the most famous guy in Kansas City, not named George Brett, I guess, at this point. Writing a book about him first year. I talked to RG3 the other day. My boy Dave Sheinin did that for the Washington Post. I think it's difficult to write a book, but I think there's a thirst for it, certainly in your part of the world, and I'm going to find that out when I land on Saturday, right?
Yeah, you will see plenty of Patrick Mahomes jerseys when you get here, and you will experience the Mahomes magic because this town is absolutely enthralled with that guy.
Well, the book. Tell me about the book and the idea of doing the book.
Yeah, the publisher of the book, they try to do one player that I think is going to be a breakthrough each year. And last year they chose Patrick Mahomes, which is what kind of got the whole thing started. And and really getting to know him a little bit more and study his career and everything. And I think even after the book, and just seeing him and with all of the success that he has gone through, and this offseason, I mean, you're going to see him in a lot of commercials during this NFL season. He really hasn't changed. I mean, he's got a lot of demands in his time. Everybody wants to talk to him. Everybody wants a piece of him. But he's still incredibly down to earth. I mean, he's still just the guy that likes to go out and watch games with his friends and watch games at home. I mean, he's a football junkie in the nerdiest way possible. And none of that's changed. I mean, he's still a really humble guy. He still has his friends. He's still very approachable. That's one of the reasons why the fans love him here. It's remarkably down to earth for as much success as he's had early in his career.
Matt, let's talk about this defense and upgrades or wherever it is. I know it's a different unit and certainly a familiar unit when you got John Harbaugh saying spags to Steve Spagnuolo across the field. But I know Andy Reid's brought in some young old-timers into the program out there in Kansas City, and feels like old home week, I'm sure, for John Harbaugh going out to Kansas City and seeing Andy and his troops trying to shore up a defense that was a little too leaky to win a championship last year, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of love between those guys. I know Andy Reid's a big John Harbaugh fan. Been a fan of his for a long time, and yeah, this defense, what Steve Spagnuolo has tried to put together, and what the Chiefs have got out and tried to build, is completely revamped from last year. Frank Clark and Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. I mean, they're the guys that they're leaning on to try and make the biggest impact in improving this defense. Chris Jones, who had a huge year last year, looks even leaner and stronger than he did a year ago, and has had a really good start to the season thus far. They still got some question marks. They've got some weak spots at the cornerback position. They've got some question marks maybe at linebacker. They've got a rookie starting at safety in Juan Thornhill, who looks really solid so far, but will probably make some rookie mistakes from time to time. Those are the concerns. I mean, they definitely have some areas where they feel like that they maybe even need upgrades in season. But they're pretty optimistic that once they figure it out, once they get Steve Spagnuolo's system down, that they can be a pretty good group.
Can you play a Spagnuolo system against this offense at this point? I mean, everyone's talked about employing this 92 defense and running around with a bunch of defensive backs. Not everybody's got that sort of personnel, and certainly in trying to figure film out in 3 or 4 days during a week to play left-handed, it has been the Ravens' thought all along and Greg Roman's thought all along that, and maybe in Houston or maybe in Kansas City where you see a similar sort of offense or an offense that could do that, maybe you'd be more equipped to do that, but not everybody has the personnel to do that.
No, they don't, and I think that's a really big question mark with this defense is, whether they do have that personnel. One of the things they've really focused on this year has been just the basics of like maintaining gap integrity and that type of thing. And that ABC kind of football might be the way that this defense approach is trying to handle Jackson. I mean, you have to maintain your assignments. You have to stay fundamentally strong. You can't get out of position, and that fits a lot of what Steve Spagnuolo's been preaching with his team. So we'll see. I'm curious about how the Chiefs are going to prepare for him in practice this week. Last year, they took a cornerback, Tremon Smith, who was a high school All-State quarterback, and put him as a scout team quarterback to play Lamar Jackson. They just lost him on waivers yesterday to Green Bay. So now I'm really curious who they're going to, trot out there as a scout team quarterback this week, because they want somebody back there, with some speed, but can also throw the ball to get it a flavor for what Jackson can do.
I know they signed Greg Sinnott earlier in the week, maybe to get a flavor of offensively what the Ravens have been doing, maybe to hide him away. I mean, who knows the games that the executives are playing at this point. But certainly the Ravens defense in trying to figure out Kelce and stopping him, that's been a league-wide problem. And, aside from all the assets that Mahomes has, much like where the Ravens are with Mark Andrews right now, is finding familiarity and finding that go-to guy. Kelce's going to the Hall of pretty good so far, right?
Yeah, and to me, I think Travis Kelce is the one guy in this offense that they cannot lose. Every team tries to double team him, and you have to, because if you don't, he's going to beat you. I mean, he had 100 yards on Sunday and last week, and that is with double teams all day long. So he is going to beat you. At times, you're going to have to give it up. But teams, when they do try and double team him, that means there's somebody else open. And that's where guys like DeMarcus Robinson, McCole Hardman have got to take advantage of those matchups, because, Travis Kelce is going to free them up. What you can't let Kelce do is just beat you too much. I mean, if he gets too many third down conversions, that's where they go to. I mean, he is their, and especially with Tyreek Hill out now, he is their go-to guy in clutch moments. And he can make the play. So stopping Kelce is, I think, a huge part of trying to slow down the Chiefs.
Kansas City Chiefs coming off victories on the road in Jacksonville, where they gave up some yardage, as well as in Oakland, where they gave up some yardage, taking on the Ravens this week. Speak to Kansas City in the aftermath of the Royals implosion. I mean, certainly here in Baltimore, we have that as well, where I felt it at the game the other day, and actually I wrote about it out at WNST.net about how Lamar Jackson has sort of brought out a new fan base. I don't know that would be the case in Kansas City. I don't know what the aftermath of the knee was, a couple of years ago. It certainly was devastating here, as well as the team not being very good in the aftermath of all that. And Joe Flacco's departure last year. There's sort of a new lease on life from the fan base here and new people for sure in the stands with a franchise that, unlike your franchise, really had a birthplace. The franchise here, people put their money up 1996, and they went and sat for 20 years in the same seats every week. All that's changing here in those Lamar Jackson jerseys. But we don't have a baseball team here anymore. There's nothing sort of to rally when you lose 100 games every year for a couple of years. There's not that one big game or the time people come downtown, not even opening day. You guys had a parade there, had an incredible run of baseball success, and now that's all taken away. I would think that there's a workup level for the Chiefs, much like here in a similar way, where when you play 80 baseball games at home that none of them matter, the first football game that does matter and you're 2-0, it's a BFD. I have a feeling the tailgate lots are going to be full up at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning out in Kansas City.
Yeah, Kansas City in late 70s and the early middle part of the 1980s was just a football desert. The team really fell off after its success in the early days, and with the Royals on the rise then, it really just crippled the Chiefs. And with Marty Schottenheimer arriving in the late 80s and rebuilding this franchise, it took a whole new level. And they were packing the place every single week. The tailgating, it took off. And they built a culture around football that's really, maintained over the last 30 years. And yeah, it's funny you mentioned 2015 because, the Chiefs were 1-5 in early October when the Royals started their World Series run. And they ripped off 10 games in a row to end the season. And it's almost like it didn't happen because everybody was so enthralled with the Royals. This is kind of a market that, honestly, it can really only get behind maybe one team at a time. And they've never experienced both teams being good at the same time, which probably helps. But right now, yeah, you're seeing, and a lot of it is the Mahomes effect. You're seeing people who, maybe haven't been season ticket holders before who are like, yeah, I really like this quarterback. He's fun to watch. Let's get involved. And I think even some fans that walked away, who have been long-term fans and maybe weren't interested in the game as much, are coming back because they see this guy at quarterback and it electrifies them. So that's it. Yeah, you're going to see a fired up fan base. It's going to be their opening week this weekend. So this is a franchise that's on the rise. They definitely feel like that a Super Bowl is coming their way. Well, everybody wants to be there for the ride.
I was there the day that Eric Winston berated the fans, about what happened with Matt Castle and the fire Scott Pioli, of planes and the flags flying around and the Belcher tragedy. The Chiefs have had to overcome a lot. Andy Reid really has, had quite a mess there over the course of time. And to find this kid and to give him a year on the bench and, ease him into all of this, this has been quite a strategy. And, hey, I'm here in Baltimore where the strategy was we're going to get rid of Flacco, who won a championship, and we're going to bring in a kid that nobody else in the league wanted to shift their offense for. We're going to draft around him. We're going to build around him. And you're seeing two sort of strategies collide here this week in the early going. And both of these teams have some designs on being in Miami later in the year at this point, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I think these are two franchises that I think have turned into a large degree, model type of franchises that you want to emulate. What the Chiefs have done, with Andy Reid and now Brett Veach, the general manager, over the last couple of seasons, but it's Reid's mentality. It really is. That's what permeates throughout this organization is his approach, and it's different. It certainly was different than what the Chiefs went through for about a decade when they had a lot of down moments, and he did. Andy Reid came in when this franchise was at a low point and really rebuilt it and has turned it into a consistent winner. And now he's got the quarterback that is just the absolute perfect fit for what he's ever wanted to do. He's 61 years old. He's coaching, this is his 21st year as a head coach. And people around you will tell you that he's never been happier. He's never been more excited than he's been the last couple of seasons, and it's because he's got a quarterback that challenges him.
He is Matt Derrick. You can find him at Chiefs Digest and certainly out on Twitter before, during, and after the game this week out at Arrowhead at Matt Derrick. That's Derrick. Hey, man, I appreciate the visit as always. We don't get together often enough, but hey, if we do this right, well, maybe you guys will be coming here for some non-tourist crab cakes in January, but I wouldn't argue with another barbecue trip out to Kansas City with a little chill in the air. I always enjoy my trips out to Kansas City, so save me some barbecue. We'll get in there, and I'll be a tourist for a weekend. How about that? Get me a bib.
That sounds good. We'll definitely save you some ribs.
Matt Derrick joins us here from Chiefs Digest. You can find him at Matt Derrick as well as at ChiefsDigest.com. And the book is Patrick Mahomes Showtime, available at TriumphBooks.com. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Baltimore positive, alive and well this week. We're down to Fadley's. Speaking of non-tourist crab cakes, going to have me a great crab cake on Thursday. Brandon Scott, Baltimore City Council President, will be joining us. He'll be our guest. Don and I getting together for some Baltimore positive magic with a mayoral candidate. I will be having all the mayoral candidates on who want to come on between now and April when the primary election season begins, because I am Baltimore positive and I want better leadership for our city too. That was the whole point. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.